It feels like if we were talking about doing this 10 or 15 years ago, that would be a really arduous process to actually get the business started, get it launched, and start testing whether it works or not. Today, with the no code kind of movement and a lot of the businesses that are getting created there, that's much easier. And I know you've talked a little bit about the no code stuff before, but maybe kind of just give us your perspective on kind of where we are today and how you see that specific vertical developing over the next couple of years.
Yeah. So, I mean, I said earlier, I'm super high pace and I love seeing stuff happen quickly. And so I used to get really frustrated. I'm originally a designer. I would design something in Photoshop and I'd hand it off to a front-end developer to do it in HTML or start building a web app or whatever. And I'd get so frustrated because it would always take a day or two to do it. And I didn't know enough. I didn't know JavaScript. I couldn't get in there and tweak it and stuff. And so when I started using Webflow about 4 or 5 years ago, I was like, holy crap, this is amazing. I don't have to worry about hosting or coding. I can just myself design something and build it. And so I ended up building the original Tiny Capital website. It was such an awesome experience because I had the idea and executed it within 24 hours. And so, no code since then has obviously grown a lot. That Webflow is just for websites. But this idea that with very, very simple tools, you can basically clone something like Airbnb, or you could build a complex form or something like that, where you're piecing together all these different services and basically making a web app without coding, I think is very powerful because you can test an idea. You can come up with an idea for an MVP and you can see if you can get revenue and validate the idea before you go out and raise money and hire a whole bunch of people and go through that. And so it shortens the cycle to get to product market fit and to get to a point where you have a basic MVP. And I don't think that, we're not going to be running, Airbnb should not be running on no code platforms, right? Like it's not about that. It's about creating the really simple version of it. It's like, if you look at Axios has all these newsletters. They could have, and they probably do use MailChimp or Aweber or something like that to start. But then as they get bigger, maybe they build their own custom code, but it enables people to get started and move quickly. And so, you see that same effect, the Squarespace effect of you're a restaurant, you don't need a web developer. I think the same thing is going to happen with web apps and pretty soon mobile apps. And I'm super excited about that from just the idea of testing MVPs. What I'm really interested in is the idea of, right now, it's not worth anyone owning a business that requires developers and coding that does, say, $100,000 or $200,000 a year, simply because there's no way to employ the people you need and still make a profit. With no code, I think there's the potential to have a $200,000 a year business that is actually profitable and makes someone $100,000. And while I'm not interested in that scale, I think it's going to empower a lot of people to have the freedom to run their own businesses and have a nice life, and then use that capital to do more interesting things instead of being a developer at Facebook or something.
Yeah, and I think part of what at least fascinates me from what I understand about the businesses you guys own, there's a lot of venture capitalists and private equity folks who would look and say, what is the moat? And I only invest in infrastructure businesses, and they kind of have this cookie cutter approach to what they'll invest in or buy. With you actually appear to be willing to go kind of the full stack. So everything from marketplaces like the Dribbles of the world, et cetera, all the way to a furniture business, which is really just an e-commerce store. Right. And you're selling any widget through that, but it happens to be a really nicely done piece of furniture. And so it feels to me like the no code movement really empowers some of the things that are actually outside of the sweet spot of most venture capitalists and private equity folks. You mentioned it based on scale, but also it almost seems like the types of businesses as well. Right. I don't know how many of them are going out looking for I want to invest in a furniture manufacturer, right, that sells online. Maybe at some, huge scale that, and kind of blitz scale it, if you will. But what you guys are really building there, it seems like that would be outside their wheelhouse. Something like no code empowers that to be done quickly, though. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I mean, I think no code empowers both venture businesses and normal, just run of the mill sustainability, simple $200,000 a year lifestyle businesses. What is interesting is there's a company we invested in called Flytographer, which is a global network of travel photographers. So the idea is, let's say you're in Italy, in Venice, and you want to, remember that trip forever. And so you schedule a travel photographer to show up in a square at a certain time and take photos of you and your family. And it's super pro. So instead of having crappy photos by dad, you get this beautiful photo album. And it was really interesting. The founder, she originally, for the first 2 years of the business, just had a Squarespace website, a very well-designed Squarespace website. You wouldn't know if you looked at it. And it was a form. And so you basically would click through, and then there'd be a series of questions of where are you, and who, you want to book, and what city are you in, and all this kind of stuff. And she actually got to hundreds of thousands or maybe even millions of dollars of revenue off of the Squarespace site before then going out, raising money, and hiring a bunch of people. And what it enabled her to do was validate the idea, but also she could delay raising money. And by delaying raising money, she increased her potential valuation for her first raise. So she owns way more of the business than she would have if she'd gone out, raised an angel round and a seed round before getting revenue. So I think stuff like that is super interesting. And that's a very old school version of that. That's just a Squarespace site. Think about like somebody who does like a marketplace or, an Airbnb style website. They could get pretty far on no code.